All right, so we're continuing through our architecture development iteration. We're still within the information systems architecture phase, and we've dealt with some of the data architecture pieces, and we're now looking at the application architecture landscape. Now remember, we've still got the 5 steps that we work our way through. Just to reiterate, views and viewpoints and stakeholders, reference models, as is to be gap analysis, and we ratify all of that. So those are the consistent steps that you're going to work through. Now, what I want to show you today is really how one identifies an application. So how you bring the business world together with the data world, and that identifies your applications. And it's really where the rubber hits the road, because ultimately what you have here is the business side coming together with the technology components, and then they're going to build an application that sits in the middle. Now, if you recall, in our data architecture space, we built a data architecture specification, which was a variety of entities. And you may recall, we used the term customer and we used the term product. Right? And sitting on the business side, right, we had something referred to, remember, as manage customer and manage product. Within the business architecture space, my recommendation might be to drop that down a level. So within the managed customer space, you could say allocate funds to customer, right? Or you could say allocate product bouquet to customer. Those are some of the types of things that might occur within that space. But just to carry on with the example, what we have here are the functions. So if you recall, functions are one of the building block types that we identified, all right, within the module 1. And at the top here you have data, and data is also one of the building block types that we identified. Right? And the meta model which we introduced in module 1 shows how these two pieces are linked together. And that's really what I want to do now, is I want to link these two together in a mixed fashion of what we do within the architecture discipline. So all we do is we build a matrix, right? So we take all of the functions across an organization and we take all of the data. Now, bearing in mind, I would have done this for an entire enterprise. So according to my partitioning model, this could be all the strategic data aspect, assets in an organization and the strategic business functions. If it's a segment, it would be segment functions and segment data classes. If it's a capability, same story, right? So your partitioning plays a strong role in the level of which you're going to particularly document business functions and document your data assets. Now the application landscape says, how do I take all of these pieces and automate them? Well, that's really what we're doing here. We're automating business functions that manipulate and change data in a particular way. We're automating them in information service, commonly referred to as an application. So there's a variety of techniques that you can use to cluster information, but really to just keep it simple. All that what you need to do within this space is you have your series of functions. Here's managed customer, here's managed product, down here could be managed distribution, down here could be manage my employees and my staff. And there's a variety of functions that you're going to use. And sitting at the top here, you've got, remember we spoke about nouns, so there was the customer which sat here, and there was the product which sat here. And this is what we mean by a matrix. A matrix is basically an Excel spreadsheet, right? So which looks at rows and columns. Your columns are your data entities, customer and product, and your rows are your functions, manage customer and manage product. Ultimately, once you go through this exercise and through a series of clustering and affinity techniques, right, you're going to land up with that image, right? And what you're seeing here, right, is your first view of an application. Why? Because the definition of an application is like functions on like data. So there might be a whole bunch of functions all listed here, and what I've done through my clustering technique is I've grouped them all together into this application. And one of them might be managed customer. Well, this application, okay, could be a customer management service or solution, all right? This one down here might be a product lifecycle management application. All right. These building blocks here, all right, remember we've got a function building block, we've got a data building block. I've merged the two together. Well, we get what's referred to as a logical application component. And that's in your meta model as well that we introduced in module 1. It's a logical application component. It's a logical grouping of like activities. And that makes up your application architecture. There are other techniques. So just a bit of a sidebar. TOGAF, for example, refers to service-oriented architecture, which looks at a more dynamic way to expose this business functionality on the web in a standardized fashion to the rest of the world. Well, what you can do, if you're following a service-oriented architecture approach, you wear your services hat, so you're doing architecture, but you're doing it with a services-oriented architecture style or flavor, and you might then call this, instead of calling it a logical application, we call it a service. And that might be then breaking up those different services in different ways to be consumed by people all the way around the world. And that's in effect how Google exposes their services and Facebook exposes their services. So for example, Facebook has that single sign-on service, which allows you to use Facebook to log on to pretty much any website now. So that is a service. It's actually one of the sort of a fine-grained service that's sitting in one of these blocks over here. So that's really all you're doing from a services-oriented perspective. But that's the summary of the application landscape. What you will do now is you'll take all of these logical application components that you have here and you'll build them into a logical application model. And that's one of the examples that we have for you that you can refer to. And you can see also in that logical application model, it's very similar to the business anchor model and the data model, that you can actually use it as an anchor model. You can overlay a variety of aspects over it. In other words, where is the strategic investment? Where are the pain points occurring? And you can use that as a communication tool. From a TOGAF perspective, your output out of this is a application architecture or an application specification document, which ties in with your business specification document, your data specification document, and your application specification document. These are the documents that you're building up as you work your way through the ADM cycle.